Welcome to Our Drummers Musicians, your backstage pass to Melbourne's vibrant music scene. Recorded on a cosy couch in Brunswick, join us as we explore what it truly means to be a musician and speak to the diverse talents that make music in our city. Today on the podcast, I'm here with Josh Manu, a dynamic session bassist and integral member of the band Honey. Josh's musical journey has seen him collaborate with a wide range of artists, including Ben Abraham, Michaela Jayde, Tony Gould, and Lanni Zimmer. His versatility and skills have made him a sought-after musician in the industry. Through the Monash sessions, Josh has recorded with renowned jazz artists such as Kenny Werner, Vince Jones, Enrico Rava, Paul Grabowski, and Mike Knock. In 2023, he completed his honours at the Victorian College of the Arts, where he recorded his original compositions and wrote this thesis, Where the Tensions Lie, searching for emotional expression through the colours of the modes. Josh regularly performs with well-known Melbourne establishments RnBabe and Uncomfortable Science, showcasing his ability to blend into various musical settings seamlessly. Coming from a family of musicians and having played the bass with his church for many years, Josh's love for music is deeply rooted in his upbringing. Josh has also been teaching bass to all ages and abilities for 8 years, drawing on his breadth of practical experience and completion of a Bachelor of Music at Monash Uni in the jazz and improvisation stream. Join us as we dive into Josh's musical journey, exploring his diverse experiences, his insights on teaching and performing, and his passion for music. We want to take a moment to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast was recorded. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present. Hey Josh, welcome to the podcast.
G'day, how you doing?
What is the most recent album that you've been listening to?
Oh, good question. I've been, so many. I think that probably the biggest one that has had the most, when you listen to an album for the first time and it just gets your attention, the one that's probably done that most recently has been Michelle Ndegeocello's album.
Oh yeah.
The Omnichord Rulebook. I've loved Michelle's work like for years and years and years. She's been a huge inspiration for me, and I've always like really gotten around to her early stuff. But lately, I've been because I follow her on Instagram. I've been following the journey of this album when it was getting released. I was like, oh cool, she's releasing a new album. Something about the Omnichord that seems kind of interesting, kind of weird. But I was like, I'll give it a shot. And as I started listening to it, just like from the start, I was like, whoa, this is heavy, this is cool. So really liking that album at the moment.
Yeah, sick. I didn't know about it until it came out, and like you, I hadn't been following the whole thing. So what was it like going from watching her put out all the promo and the build up to then seeing her play it live, and not the whole album, but like so much of those new tracks?
Well, it was interesting because I remember a few years ago, or maybe not that long ago, I just remember a post that she did a little while ago where she had an Omnichord. You know what the Omnichord is? Yeah. She had one, and she was kind of like, sort of just was playfully like, I'm going to maybe write some songs with it or something. I can't remember exactly. I just remember seeing it and like, of course she would, because, she's a genius, so she's going to do something with it. And she's just having fun with it. I didn't really know much about the Omnichord, so I was like, okay, that kind of, seems like an interesting sort of thing to do. And then she started doing promotional stuff. I'm like, she's actually like started recording some songs with it. Interesting. And then she released it. And so I was kind of like, that's pretty interesting. It'll be cool to see what she does with it. And then she released the album, and literally the first track you can hear from the get-go, you're like, that's the Omnichord, there it is. But it's cool. Like I don't know, it was pretty, I didn't follow it like super closely, but it was interesting seeing the initial post, initial for me, where she like had an Omnichord, and it was just this kind of weird period of time where I also work at a music shop sometimes, and we had a customer brought in an Omnichord to get repaired around that same time. So it was just kind of this weird, wow, like in that really weird concentrated period of time where I was like, Omnichords, they're a thing. And then also there was that video that came up because of the Gorillas, like one of the dudes showing someone else one of their songs that's just an Omnichord beat. And I was like, it was just this kind of strange couple months where suddenly I knew about the omnichord and its existence, and then I forgot about it, and then our album came out, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right, the omnichord. Oh yeah, that's an omnichord beat. Oh, this sounds sick, So
Yeah.
yeah, kind of
Wow.
cool.
We've had a funny, like old listeners of the podcast will remember we had Danny Frugia on, and Danny's put out a bunch of records that started with like just omnichord and
That's
drums.
awesome.
And then the final track on his third album is Omnichord Farewell. And we were talking about like the closure of his period of his life with the omnichord.
That's great.
And I remember like years and years ago, I was out at his place. I think we were just like catching up or something. And he was like, oh, I've got myself an omnichord. And I that night I went to my partner Lucy's place, and Tony Floyd was there. And he was like, check out this thing I've just got. I just bought myself an omnichord.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what?
That's
It's
so
like
funny.
two Melbourne drummers both getting omnichords like the same day or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just I feel like that you get to a stage where you're like, it's just a fun toy to play with as well.
Yeah.
Because it also like it literally looks and feels like a toy.
Mm-hmm.
Like when that guy brought it in, it's only because I knew a little bit about it. I was like, oh, this is a thing.
Yeah.
But when I first saw it, I was like, why did this guy bring in this toy keyboard?
Yeah, it looks like a kid's little like intro
Yeah.
to music instrument.
Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty funny. No, I love that. That's good.
Well, how did it all start with you and the bass?
That's a good question. My so I come from a pretty musical family, and my parents, a big part of that. My dad is a phenomenal musician, just natural musician. Plays piano, keys, sings, plays flute, and my mum, would join him a lot. So they brought us up playing lots of music, and I'm the youngest of 5, and all of us were brought up singing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like me probably not as much, but still all 5 of us kind of would sing around the house and whatever. And part of that heritage as well is like my dad's family is also very musical, and my dad's brother is actually like one of the leading jazz bass players in Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
So his name's Yance Manusama, and he's a real legend over there. And I guess just growing up, my dad always, my dad loves the bass, and he was always, talking about it, and he would always tell me about my Yance and being like, you should play the bass, you should learn bass. And so one day when we were traveling, because we used to go to Indonesia all the time, and we actually went to go see him perform when I was about 10 or 11. I was like, wow, that's cool, bass is sick. And we started talking about getting bass lessons. And then on my 12th birthday, they literally just bought me a bass. So like a crappy little, at the time would have been like $150 Ashton electric bass that I had throughout all of high school. I even would play it at a few events, and I'd play it at church and at different conferences and stuff in the later years of high school. And it just is so bad, but it's it was my bass. It was my first bass. I still have it because I went to a Marcus Miller workshop where I got it signed afterwards. Like he did a meet and greet with everyone that went to the workshop. So it's got a Marcus Miller signature on it. So now I'm like, now I can never throw it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of an interesting journey. I feel like I didn't really pursue it. I didn't pester my parents for it. My dad was just super, super supportive. So he just kind of was like, yep, we're just getting you a bass. My uncle was a big reason for that. And also just, family, and always wanted to be doing something in music.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think once I started on bass, I just realized how much I liked it, especially once I started learning jazz in high school. Martin Jackson who runs the Melbourne Jazz Co-op. He was a big, because he was one of my teachers at Q High School.
Yep.
And he was a big part of getting me really into into playing jazz, along with my bass teacher at the time, Andy Price. And I just, for some reason, jazz just made sense to me. like, in terms of the bass, you get given a chord chart and the chord, you literally just are told, just play the bass notes. You're like, cool, that's easy, I can do that. And then it's like, oh, and here's how you can add the 5. It's like, oh, that makes sense as well. And then there are chord tones and, arpeggios and things that it's all based around shapes and, patterns, and it's very logical.
Mm-hmm.
The bass, I feel like, as an instrument. And I just, I think I just really loved it from there. I've started trying to learn other instruments, mostly teaching myself. Drums I really enjoy, but piano I really struggle with. And it's kind of, I'm still kind of on that journey of teaching myself all these things, but I guess the main thing is that it's so interesting how much bass just makes so much sense to me. There's obviously also the years and years of playing it, so I've developed a natural relationship with it. But I think I'm just one of those people that got lucky. I just happened to fall into the right instrument at a young age. I feel like some people discover that later on in life. They learn something for ages and then they discover, actually, drums is my instrument, or vice versa. But I think I got lucky.
Wow, how cool!
Yeah.
It's interesting that you only started playing it when you were 12. I think I'd assumed that you'd been playing since like you were a really little kid.
Yeah,
Had you done any other like instruments, or was it just singing and being around, your family and all the different musical things they were doing?
I think just that. I took piano lessons when I was in grade 3. Did that for a year. And I wanted to do it the following year, but I don't know what happened. I don't know. I think my parents didn't sign me up for the lessons for some reason. They forgot. I don't know. Who knows? When you're the youngest of 5 kids, admin like that can just definitely fall through the cracks. So I really wanted to, but I enjoyed playing a little bit of piano when I was a kid. But coming up, I was more of a singer. Well, I thought I was. I apparently, looking back, I wasn't that great of a singer, which is fine. They didn't tell that to 8-year-old me, but now they can tell, 28-year-old me that I wasn't a great singer. That's fine. I didn't really learn anything before bass, but I guess being surrounded by it, and then also once I started learning bass, it was only 2 years before I started playing at church, and then once you start playing at church, you're basically thrust into that musical environment, the language of it all, the communication style, the flexibility of it. It's all it's a bit of a baptism in fire, so to speak, when you kind of thrust into that world where you have to learn a lot because it's very communal, and you brought up learning stuff, playing week in, week out, which for most high schoolers they don't get to do. So, I think I was very lucky with the world that I was in from the moment that I started learning. Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely, I know for me, that's how I started playing. I was just, it started with like, my mum's playing drums in like a band at church. And so I would get to play one song like a week when I was 7, and then I got put in a band like a year or 2 later, and then it was just like I didn't know the like sit in the bedroom and practice the like rudiments or I didn't have a teacher in primary school doing it. It was just, okay, you're in this band and you play music with these people, and it's like every week or it's every fortnight or whatever, and it's, I don't know, music was just about doing this thing with all these other people. Learn this beat and this thing. And
I remember I was lamenting to a friend of mine, Nick, Nick Kuritzis, because we were at uni together, and I was telling him, I was like, Nick, I just don't practice as much as I should, and I was kind of down on myself because I wasn't, I was reflecting on how much I know other people in our year were practicing and how much they were like, committing daily to bettering themselves. And I was getting frustrated just outwardly to him. I was getting frustrated at myself. I was like, I feel like I'm really limiting myself because I'm not practicing. I barely practiced in uni, and unless it was like for a recital or for a, tech exam.
Right. Yep.
And I was like, I was just getting frustrated with myself, and, a little bit woe is me, but also just, being like, I wonder why I'm, why, like, you just kind of have one of those, like, halfway through your uni degree where you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? I don't practice, I don't work. But then he made this really interesting point where he pointed out basically that the life that I'm living, I might not practice like in the bedroom practicing scales and whatever, but I'm in a week in, week out environment, like you said, where you're just playing. You're playing all the time, and I'm actually engaging in a more, I feel like a more natural kind of progression of growth where you're just learning from other musicians constantly, and you're playing, you're getting experience, trying out things, trying communication skills in the band week in, week out. And that kind of was a bit of a light bulb moment for me, because I realized, there's not many people that I'm studying with that are playing every week, regularly. Like some of us would obviously get gigs, or you'd get like some kind of residency just at like a bar or whatever, playing standards. But short of that, most people have a gig every like once a month, or, when you're in uni. And I kind of had this realization, and that's where I've, I teach at a school, at a Christian school. And so there are kids there naturally that, not all of them, but like there are kids there that naturally go to church. And I that's one of my biggest things in teaching. I'm like, look, if you can join your church band, you can join your little youth group band or whatever. It's like one of the best ways to grow and increase yourself in musicianship, because you just get experience that you don't get, I think, anywhere else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless you're in a family where you guys are playing all the time, but those are super rare. So.
Yeah, it's definitely like a unique and great space for growing musicians. So many amazing musicians have come out of, that experience. It's a special place, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think about, like, the way that that's influenced the way you come to a band now? Like, you're a member of Honey.
Mm-hmm.
If we take that, like, how much is this background of like family and church music and then coming through and like studying it? You've got this like interesting background of like it's a passion, and now it's like a deep academic pursuit.
Yeah.
And now like
also a vocation, and
yeah, it's all the different layers sort of coming together, and now it's like, okay, well, you're in a band and you're playing original music, and it's kind of like it's you, but in a different way.
Yeah. No, for sure. I guess it's just more. It just adds more layers to who I already am. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of had this realization recently where I really truly, I took a bit of a break from like really pursuing music just for a little while, and like was kind of saying no to a few gigs, and just kind of wanted to take a bit of a step back. And at the end of all of that, I had this realization where I was like, you know what, I actually really, really love music, and I really love performing. And so it's so, as you lay it out all like that, so clearly it really shows that it has been such a massive part of my life and such a part of the fabric of who I am, I guess, that it kind of naturally comes out in who I am. So when I work with Honey, when we go to the rehearsal room, I guess I don't really think of it that much, because whenever I rock up to rehearsal, I just am who I am, and when I try to work with the guys there, I love Honey. We've been together for a few years now, and we've got such a tight knit dynamic going on that we can just say the wildest stuff to each other, and it's the best. We have so much fun. And I think for me, I try to really be very communal about it. We always try to talk about creating a familial environment. But on the flip side of that, one thing we've also learned is that sometimes it's also okay to just be workmates,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. So, I love those guys to death. They're like, some of my best friends, but at the same time, they also don't need to be. And, we have a professional working relationship, and we have, close dynamics in terms of like I said, the stuff that we can just say the wildest stuff that we can just say to each other, the stuff that we joke about. But you know, it's still you can still very clearly see like when we're there to work, we can work. So it means that it doesn't get weird if someone pulls someone up on like, hey, you know, you said you were going to organize this. What's going on? You know, and you don't get feelings involved.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still when we're playing together, we still support each other. We're communal in the way that we, you know, coordinate rehearsals, and we still get around each other if someone's going through something tough. You know, it's yeah, I don't know, and I guess I never really think about it. There have been times where I've had to think about it in terms of like, okay, you know, we don't have to actually be all, you know, best mates all standing around singing Kumbaya all the time. Like we can also just be workmates. But for the most part, I'm just like, yeah, anyone I do music with, I'm there to like be a part of that community. Even if it's like a wedding gig, you know, I like to rock up to a wedding gig and make sure that I'm there, I'm present with the other members of the band so that we're having a good time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm one of those few people in our kind of age range that still enjoys wedding gigs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm the same. I love a good wedding gig.
Yeah, I can still have a good time. So, because for me, it's just it's performance, it's music, and I don't know. I just feel like so many people are like, oh, they get so over it so quick.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it has like a bit of a stigma at times. Like some people just do the wedding music scene as like their business or profession and stuff.
Yeah,
but the like people that are generally doing it as like a crossover to support financially their other like artistic endeavors or whatever.
Yeah,
it definitely is like another wedding gig.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but I get that same thing of like, especially if it's with like a good band, like we're just playing like fun music and people are dancing and I'll play this thing and you go, oh, that's cool, I'll play this extra bit and,
exactly,
you can have fun for a couple hours.
And I actually really like it as a chance to try new stuff. You know, I've got this band that I've been playing with for a little while. We've been doing a lot of I've been doing weddings since I think like I want to say 2012, 2013. It's actually with a bunch of guys that I started playing with at a youth conference back in 2011. We're called the Groovesmen. It's a really corny name, but people remember it. That's all that matters.
Is this just a function band?
We're basically just do functions. We've done weddings for so long. I think we've done a couple. Maybe we've done an engagement party and a birthday one time, but pretty much weddings. And it's I love that band because, you know, we have a close enough dynamic that we can just try stuff. So I've, you know, in recent years, like me and the drummer will like start doing like rap verses or rap bridges or whatever, like in songs. So like I've learned the rap for American Boy and
you'll do the rap.
I'll do the rap.
Sick.
And I'll like, you know, we do other little silly like you just sort of develop a skill. I've also started singing a couple songs recently. Again, just to develop that skill, because you realize at weddings, I had this realization recently because I think I've always been brought up with like killer musicians. Like my first wedding gigs were with my sister Michaela, and we're getting, you know, I'm playing with people like Dave Tweedy, Tim Coghill, you know, playing on these gigs and playing as a replacement for Pat, More of Us Are Silly, Big Pat. Yeah. So I'm like, in my mind, all this time, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to like be professional. I got to be really good. You know, I have to be the utmost. I saw it as like the pinnacle of skill, basically.
Yes.
And then I had this realization recently where I was like, look, I'm going to be as good as I'm going to be. So I'll do what I can to make it a good night. But also, like, people at wedding gigs aren't really listening to the band. They're feeling the vibe and they're feeling the energy, but like people don't really care like about all the little things. If the groove feels good, that's my main thing as a bass player. But like, and people notice an exceptional singer, but they won't care about the mediocre to even poor singers. So therefore, I'll take a couple songs, you know. I might be a little bit, my tone's not great, I might be a little bit pitchy, whatever, I don't know what it is, but I'm definitely not a high level singer in any regard. But I'll take a couple songs and people will still be like, oh, it was a great night. Yeah. You know, because it's a wedding gig. People are there for themselves and for the couple, not so.
Yeah, they haven't come to the gig.
Not to like watch the gig, yeah. So I'm like, I think wedding gigs are a great opportunity to, try things, push yourself in a new skill.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe swap instruments for a song because people won't notice. Like, I don't know, like silly things like that I really enjoy.
Yeah. It's nice. It's nice to hear that you enjoy it and talk about that too. It's funny. I had that same start to wedding gigs. I didn't play with your sister, but I played with Pat.
Yeah.
And, I was filling in for like Andy Fissenden for a few gigs.
Yeah.
And it was wild because it would be like, oh, what did you guys get up to this week?
Yeah.
And it's like, touring with like whoever or recording on the newest album of like, someone great.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, what did you do? And I was like, oh, I'm practicing for my second year uni recital.
Yeah.
Doing music theory or something.
Yeah. I had to do my tech sheets.
Exactly. But it felt like, it's got to be like really, really good because these people are amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, once it became like, actually, they're just coming to like, if they have a good fun time, like, that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
And the relief of that realization.
Yeah, exactly. So, I can just kind of have fun and, try some interesting little sounds, bring a little synth, maybe try and work on my synth bass playing or, things like that. I mean, then obviously it's like, do I want to lug a synth around and make that happen? But, still just fun to try stuff out.
Well, I saw you playing the synth with Honey.
Yeah.
Is that a newer addition to your,
to my
world?
Yeah, it is. I've been wanting to play synth bass for a long time. And the biggest thing, the biggest hurdle to begin with was getting a synth.
Okay.
And I had my eyes on one and I remember seeing one online years ago for $400. I was like, great. I'm going to wait till I can save up and do it. And then lockdowns hit. And for whatever reason, this is the Novation base station. Because I'd heard that it was a good sort of like reasonably cheap entry model but still good solid sounds, which it is. It's really good sounds. But I was like, okay, I'll save up for that. And then, lockdowns hit. And for whatever reason, the Novation base station just like picked up in stocks, like in the in the secondhand market when for some reason a particular instrument just is like now really popular.
Yep.
So now they're selling for like $600, $700. I was like, what the heck? So anyway, that took me a little while. I eventually found one. I bought it. Really liked it. In just post COVID, I started getting into it, started practicing it, and been slowly trying to. Firstly, it was just practicing stuff at home and playing along to recordings. And then I think the biggest thing for my growth has just been literally just Quentin, who's the keys player in Honey, being like, all right, because he would play a little bit or like some like bass synthy sounds, like little rhythms and stuff. He'd be like, all right, Josh, you just take this. I was like, well, yep, okay, I guess, nope, fair enough. I've just let's just put my money where my mouth is and let's work on it and then also bring it to the practice room and, it's been a push to like make myself get it because going from a string instrument to like a horizontal fingers out in front of me thing is still a bit. It's better now because I've been practicing more, but it's a really tricky like mindset change for me to go from thinking because even with string instruments, if I get something that's tuned in fifths, it doesn't take me long to like like as I mentioned to you in private before, like I've started teaching cello a little bit, and it didn't take me long to realize okay, this is how this instrument works and I can kind of figure my way out around this. But going to piano and it's laid out flat is a whole nother thing for me, and it just feels real weird. So it's been a slog. Slog. It's been a slog. It's been a real tough, like mental hurdle to get past. And I'm feeling more comfortable with it now. But yeah, that's been an intentional addition to my toolkit.
Yeah, cool.
And it's kind of started by doing stuff in Honey, and I'm trying to find other contexts to bring it in if possible. But yeah.
Maybe like a 1980s wedding set.
Yeah.
Just MJ, Greg Phillingane's lines.
Yeah, perfect. If I could do that. Well, I started with literally one of the first songs I wanted to learn was PYT.
Oh yeah.
Because I was like, because I already knew how to play it on the bass. So I'm like, okay, I can like, translate that to the notes that I know, and that was fun. That was actually even just those kind of old school 80s bass lines, 70s, whatever. They kind of teach you a bit about the language and so that was fun.
Yeah, you finding that like the sort of like synth bass licks are quite a different language to the like bass licks?
Oh, completely. Yeah, it's still like the same scale, still same pentatonics, but just the way that stuff falls under your fingers. There are licks that I'd learn on the electric bass from a synth bass line that I'd figure out later. Like, say, for example, Ain't Nobody, the bass line, boom, boom, and then it goes to the B natural, that line has always been really awkward for me to play in the electric bass because it's basically like a major 7 sort of, and then when I went to play it on the keys, I'm like, oh, it literally is like it just falls under your hands really easily. The way that I find synth bass tends to use a lot more arpeggios and stuff, and just piano players in general, they just love more arpeggios and whatever. Things like that, yeah. So it's been a bit of a kind of having it's kind of a good skill actually to sort of learn both on both. You know, you learn electric bass lines on electric bass and synth bass, and then vice versa. Yeah, so that's been a whole thing. But I that's why I try to approach it as just bass. I try not, instead of just learning synth bass things on the synth bass, try and sort of,
Oh yeah, sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like not just a synth bass thing. It's I'm learning.
Just learning the bass language. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Well, how do you go with all of the extra like little, chuck in an oscillator here or a pitch bend? And
I'm so far from that. Okay. To be honest, I'm like, can I just get my fingers to do what they need to do? I downloaded. I can't remember whose it was, but I downloaded a patch, like a preset library from someone. I can't remember who, like I said, but that's been cool because it's kind of like has some interesting sounds. So I basically just go through the sounds, and then I might, I'll play with the filter. I'll change the levels of the different, because there's 2 oscillators on the bass station. Maybe I'll mess with like the resonance or like a bit of overdrive or whatever, because it's got those as well. But for the most part, I'm like, okay, is this about as close as I'm going to get to the sound that I like? Yep, this is good. I'm just going to stick with this. Like I'm just trying to focus on just get the playing down, and then I can work on the sounds, But I leave the sounds to Quentin. When it comes to Honey, I'm like, I'll let him figure something out.
Yeah, cool. That's fair enough.
Yeah. I just need to make sure I can play the dang thing first.
So if you started doing this synth bass thing like post, COVID lockdowns and stuff.
Yeah.
You also went back and did your honors.
Yeah.
But when I was having a bit of a look at your thesis, that was much more like in the jazz thing than this sort of synth bass.
Yeah.
Was that just like a fun activity to do on the side whilst you then sort of spent most of your energy going back into the jazz world that you'd done, so many years ago back in Monash?
Yeah. So the synth bass thing is definitely like a fun little thing that I kind of am doing whenever I get a chance, or just a little thing that I kind of target on the side, as you said. Last year was, so my honors is something that I've wanted to do for years and years.
Okay.
Like basically as soon as I finished the bachelor in Monash in 2015, I nearly went in to do my honors the next year, but then I decided, I was like, no, I'll wait. And then that 1 year wait kind of turned into a much longer wait, and then I sort of never did it until a couple of years ago, where I was like, actually, you know what, I should rethink that, because I really want to do this, and I've always wanted to do this, and I should, do something for myself that's important to me. So yeah, it was a bit of a hard one, because by that point I'd already like picked up like lots of work. So I was like basically working a full-time equivalent sort of job, like between teaching and the music shop and all this other stuff. And I just was like, I don't know if I can, if even just financially, like the world that we're living in at the moment, I don't know if I can afford to pick up a full-time study load But you know what? I really thought about it, and my wife has been super super supportive, Abby. So she was literally like, she was my biggest, you know, kind of encourager, being like, just do it, like, you know, whatever. And I sort of had the realization, I was like, you know, if I'm not gonna, like, I have to make the decision to do it, and now is better than next year. You know what I mean? Like, I have to do it at a time where my life's only going to get busier, you know. So yeah, I wanted to really push myself, and as I said before, like, kind of getting back into music performance with realizing that I really do enjoy it and really do love it. Part of that was kind of reigniting my love of jazz. You know, that's something that I kind of haven't really looked at for a few years, and then wanting to sort of get back into that world, because I realized, like, I haven't played double for, as in before my honors, I haven't really played double much at all. And I kind of was having this, I always had this like little grief moment where I picked up the double and realized all the strength and the dexterity and the endurance that I'd lost. And I was like, oh man, yeah, I really sort of let that one go. And even just jazz in general, like, I've forgotten all the standards that I knew. And, you know, it's interesting because I can accept that I've grown as a person in other ways, and I've chosen this route that I'm on. But jazz has always, or since uni, has been such a big part of my musical background, and I do enjoy it. I do love it as an art form, and, you know, as something, as an endeavor to study. And it was such an intensive part of uni. Like, you know what it was like you're there for 3 years and it's just hectic. It's like everything is about jazz. And so, yeah, I don't know. It was a bit of an interesting one where I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to study at the VCA, which is the Melbourne uni, and get back into it. So it kind of pushed me to practice more. So I've been playing double a lot more now. Really, really enjoying that. Pushed me to, we had to compose some music. And yeah, it felt in one sense, it kind of felt sort of out of left field, sort of like decision to do my honors. But at the same time, I knew I'd really wanted to do it, and I knew I'd regret it if I never did it. So I just sort of buckled down, or whatever the phrase is, and did it.
When you say that you wanted to do it for, you know, quite a long time, was that like the actual content of your honors that you'd been, you know, thinking about and wanting to do?
Nah, just the degree.
Sure.
I think for a few different reasons, but I think the main one was just I do really love academia. I do actually enjoy that side of music, and it was just something about doing honors and getting that done, and having that. Yes, the piece of paper doesn't really mean a whole lot in most contexts, but it still was important to me, I think. And just having that achievement under my belt, you know, also just, I guess, what it can potentially open to for future, you know, academic pursuits or even careers if I ever want to do, because I really enjoy teaching. So I'd love to like have the opportunity to kind of teach a little bit more, maybe hopefully at a tertiary level. So that's just like having my honors is kind of that first step of seriously pursuing that option later on in life. So yeah, a few different reasons. The content didn't really come out until my application asked, what do you want to talk about? You know what I mean?
Sure.
But it was born out of a teaching method that I sort of developed at school when because I run a little small jazz combo for high school students, and yeah, I was sort of talking to them about the modes, and it was just this interesting discussion around why we use major modes and what are their purposes, why do we learn about them, and then how we can use them to further our understanding of improvisation. And it was a very natural process that I think then led to a very robust, I think hopefully a very robust sort of outwork in the thesis and stuff, because it was I kind of already had been thinking about it, so I was quite lucky that I had that background before starting it last year.
Do you mind explaining what the modes are in very, very brief terms?
Sure, okay.
Just because there's so many different like styles of music guests and listeners.
Yeah, true. So the modes are, you take the major scale, you take C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And a mode is when it's like a mode of that scale. So you take that same set of notes, play up and down the scale, but you start on a different note. So let's say you start on the D note, so D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. That's going to create a scale that we call Dorian, because it's the second mode of C major. And D Dorian, the way that I kind of engaged with it is that if you were to compare D Dorian to a D natural minor scale, which would be D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, it's the B that is different. So the sixth note of the D scale in D Dorian is natural, but in a D natural minor, if you were to play it like that, it would be B flat. So it's basically how you would create. You can basically create 7 unique scales just by taking one scale and starting on different notes, and those are the modes. So each of the modes has names. You know, like starting the scale on the third note, which would be E. That's a Phrygian scale. Yep, my mind just went blank a little bit, but that's correct. Starting on the fourth is the Lydian, you know, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, in that order. They've all got names, and they're all. And the way I kind of separated them was that they're kind of, when you lay them all out in the way that they work with their distances between the notes, they generally fall in the camp of either a major-ish or a minor-ish scale. And then looking at why they're different, why they're not just major or minor, or why they are, and how we can use those colors to create interesting musical choices. Yeah.
So when you're playing, like let's say in the jazz context,
yep,
how much of it like is your mind whilst you're playing thinking, oh, I want to play like this line, and then you follow the line that you're imagining, I guess. Or I'm going to try and play this chord, or I'm going to play this lick, or I'm going to put like this mode in, and I'm thinking about the mode. Do you have like that?
Yeah.
I guess like an academic or analytical like mindset going like, oh, okay, I know that like the end of this 4-bar phrase is this turnaround, so I'm going to do this? Or are you thinking more about, I just want to play this thing that is just coming out of me at the moment, or some combination of, I don't want to be too prescriptive.
No, that's a good question. The thing I always say to my students, and the thing I try to do, is I always try to sing when I'm playing. So when I'm improvising, and it also depends on the context, but for the most part, when I'm improvising, I always try to sing, because I always think that that's the most important way to like play what you're truly wanting to play in any given context. Now, you might limit yourself in terms of the things that you can actually hear versus what falls under your fingers. So I try to sing when I'm performing. So if I'm given a solo, whether it's an electric bass or double bass, whether it's jazz or just like a pop song with like 2 chords, I always try to hear it and sing it out loud, even if it's quietly to myself. I just will sing while I'm playing. But in the practice room, that's when I'll chuck on a backing track, or chuck on the tune and try to sing, but then also engage with the modes then. So I might be like, what if I play like this mode over it? What if I play, even extending it, what if I play a melodic minor lick over this? And then I'll sit in it for a while, and I'll try and find some like little licks and stuff within it that sound nice. That's why I love the bass, because the bass, once you can see the shape, it all just kind of like, I can kind of, like a video game, you got the grid, but then you can kind of see the highlighted frets that are the only acceptable options. So then you just sort of jump around between them and see what you sort of feel like playing.
Wow.
I feel like most bass players, electric guitarists could probably have that experience where
that's so cool.
You can kind of like bird's eye view a map of the fretboard. Once you've played around it a bit, you can be like, okay, cool, those are my acceptable frets. So I'm just going to jump around and see what sort of sounds fun. But you do that in the practice room. And then eventually you might be like, oh, cool, if I chuck in this flat 9 sound, I know how that sounds. So then when I go to perform, that's something that I can add to my singing performance. You know what I mean? Now, if I go to actually sing it might not be pitch perfect, but the intent is there, and that's really the important thing.
Yeah.
So I just try to. I always sing when it comes to the day when I'm performing. I always sing when I perform, and I just trust that I've done the homework to like try and most. And it's not to say that I won't still explore. Like I will play with colors, but I can still like hear them. You know, like I can still hear how me changing whether it's a natural 6 or a flat 6 is going to affect the sound. I can still kind of anticipate. But in that context, it's more about anticipating the darkness versus the lightness of it.
Oh, yeah, interesting. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
And flat 9s are a big one where I like to play around with, and so it's a little bit of a mix. But my intent is to always try and hear it first, if I can.
Yeah,
or at least anticipate, so that I don't just fall into the muscle memory of the, just playing up and down scales, because that's boring as.
Yeah. I guess that's what's getting you out of the patterns of looking down and, I can see these.
Exactly.
I could do
doing the same licks every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I feel like most people, when they listen to you, they don't really care if you play the same licks, but you care, And for me, I'm like, I don't want to be that kind of player that I play the same thing all the time.
Yep.
For me, music is all about growth, and growth away from comparison, I think is a really important thing, not being like, what's everyone else doing? Just being like, what do I want to do? And what do I want to work on? And how can I just be a better version of myself? That's why I've been wanting to pick up synth bass, because I'm like, part of it, yes, is about like, okay, the world that we live in, if people want to hire a bass player, they want someone that can play synth bass as well as bass and double bass if possible. But that's not the motivation in terms of, I want to be a better musician. I want a chance to develop my skill. This is a good excuse of something to like focus on, as opposed to like learning and sinking into the electric guitar world, which is something that I'm just so, it intrigues me sometimes, but then at the same time, like Gibson, Fender, Epiphone, I'm like, I can't be bothered. I don't really want to go down that path. So
sure.
I've got a little Ibanez that I bought, like a little hollow body Ibanez that I brought from Mike Follant, guitarist. And other than that, I just I'm happy in my little bass bubble at the moment. Yeah.
Well, Josh, we've been playing this game on the podcast where I get the guests to ask a question of the anonymous next guest.
Okay.
So I've got a question for you from our previous podcast guest.
Great. I like that.
David Quested, otherwise known as Local the Neighbor. He's a drummer and also like a sort of in the indie scene singer-songwriter.
Yeah, that's good. That is a great question. Thank you so much for asking. This is actually very close to my heart, because I am adamant that the best cake that you can possibly buy is a Woolworths chocolate mud cake, and I will die on that hill. So if I'm going to have anyone throw a birthday cake in my face, it is 100% going to be a Woolworths. I think they're like $10 now. It's a lot for one of those cakes, but let me tell you, I will eat a whole one of those cakes in a sitting if I'm given a chance. So a Woolworths chocolate mud cake is what I want.
Yeah, fair enough. It's a great cake.
Yeah.
Always Woolworths over Coles?
I just like the way that Woolworths rolls off the tongue whenever I say Woolworths chocolate mud cake.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Coles is acceptable. I think I prefer Woolies though. I should actually do a blind test. I've never done that yet. But I find that the texture of the Woolies mud cake is just a little bit silkier. I don't know if that's right. Coles can be quite dense. I don't know.
Interesting.
To be honest, I haven't really thought about the difference that much, but I should now that you've asked me that, I should actually get to and do a blind test.
I feel like I should take that on, as the podcast can facilitate this.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
A blind taste test of the mud cakes.
That would be great. I think if you could do that, send me your results, your findings.
Well, I was going to facilitate it for you.
Oh, that would be even
I'll
better.
get the cakes.
Yeah.
We'll get a blindfold.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, beauty.
And good promo for the...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right, Josh, what would you like to ask the next guest?
That's a good question. Okay. All right, give me a sec. If there's any live performance in the world, in the history of the world, that you would love to have been a part of, what would that performance be? Whether it's a live album that you have listened to or one that you've read about, any performance throughout history for you to have been a member of in the band, what would it be?
That's a great question.
Thanks.
Well, what's it like for you when you get to play these shows with your family? You know, like Ben Abraham is your brother, and he's an amazing artist, and in like a very different style to like, all of the jazz stuff that you've played, or like the Honey Band, and then like I guess Michaela Jayde has like a bit more crossover with like the soul music and stuff. But it must be so special to have this like experience where you've grown up in this family where everyone's like, really cares about music and great at it. But then it's gone on to not just be like that was this thing that I did when I grew up, and I've moved on into like the jazz world and into like this stuff. But now you're like actually able to come in and record music and like, play these great shows, but with family. Does it feel like this, sort of full circle thing, or is it more just, I don't know, they're my family, so it's just like I have to play bass when they ask me to.
A little bit. I mean, it's a little bit like that. I've always played with my family. That's the thing. Even since high school, one of my other sisters, operating under the name Baptiste, used to be.
Oh yes.
Yeah. She's not releasing any music anymore, but she was also one of the first ones to sort of get me playing as well, and she we played through she got me while I was still in high school playing, so it's kind of, I've sort of always been there playing for my family. I guess it's cool that the nicest thing honestly is that for both Ben and Michaela, like they play with such high caliber artists that I'm like, they rock up. Like for example, he'll get these like incredible musicians playing with him at this Christmas show that he does every year. He'll get like Danny Ferrugia or Lee Fisher or Lockie O'Kane playing drums. Ben Edgar on guitar, Dave Tweedy, Lawrence Folvig, these guys. And I'm like, who am I? I'm just this like guy chilling out on bass. But it's encouraging because it's like, I also know that because he's getting these caliber of musos, he could get anyone on bass. So I guess that's where the full circle moment is that I've obviously reached a level high enough that it's cool for me to work. And same with Michaela, like playing with all those guys, similar, Tim Coghill on drums. And whenever we do shows like that, that's the part that's kind of the full circle moment, is that I've obviously reached the level where not only are they just getting me to play because I'm their brother, but I can actually like cut it for these big shows that they're doing. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, because I know like for certain that if there was a better bass player, or if I wasn't cutting it, then it would have both of them would have no problem being like, I'm going to get someone else on bass. I'd be like, okay, that's fine. So it's cool. It is and it is special to share the stage with them. It's really nice.
Well, absolutely, you can definitely cut it to sit in. Yeah, you're an awesome bass player. And I've really appreciated across the years, ever since meeting you, that you've been like just a super encouraging guy to me personally, but also I see it with everybody else. Like, I think when I was like in first year uni, you came up to a bunch of us that were like new and like terrified, and it's like, it's okay, guys. Like, I'm Josh, and like I'll show you around, and like
That's
just like
so funny.
welcome. And then ever since, like I've just seen you just like embody this like very generous and like patient, caring, uplifting, encouraging guy. And your bass playing is like absolutely amazing. So
Thanks, man.
I really appreciate coming into the podcast to share like some of these little stories and stuff you're working on, because I feel like we're really getting like a special chance to see into the mind of
Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it. It's been fun to talk.
Well, I'd like to wrap up with 5 quick questions.
Sure.
So, 1, what's your favorite venue to play in Melbourne?
Honestly, probably Howler, just because the vibe there is great. But most importantly, parking is really easy, so it makes a big difference. But I do genuinely. I just the front bar and then the back band room is a really cool vibe at Howler. I like them.
What would be your dream venue to play at?
I would love to do an outdoor gig. So I'd love to do a gig at Sydney Maya.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a dream gig. Even honestly, like even if I was in like an orchestra or like I'll be in the choir for Carols by Candlelight. I don't care. I'd love to play at Sydney Maya one day. That'd be cool.
What's your coffee order?
Coffee order at the moment. I'm on a bit of a health thing, so just a batch. So
what does that mean?
Batch brew.
Well, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't drink coffee. So
right. Fair enough.
Sorry.
Good thing you asked the question. It's basically a filter coffee that they make in one big batch. That's why they call it batch brew.
Okay.
And they just let it keep it hot in this big jug.
Oh, like the Americans in the movies, that sort of thing.
No, not at all like that.
Oh.
But it's it's like a really clean tasting filtered coffee. It's really, really nice.
Okay.
Like single origin kind of stuff. But a lot of cafes don't have it, so then I'll just get a long black.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what's your favorite place to get food after a gig in Melbourne?
Lately it's been Glenny's kebabs.
I don't know Glenny's. Whereabouts is that?
So I live out in Ringwood, and they're based out in that kind of area. So
Okay.
There's one on the corner of Baronia and Canterbury Road. There's also one on the corner of Springvale and Canterbury Road. And yes, they're quite close to each other, but they're still doing very well because they're very good.
Wow.
The only thing is if you get the HSP, just get the sauce that you want, but maybe ask for a little bit less because the sauce kind of makes the top of it a little bit cold. So if you get too much sauce, it can kind of cool the meat down. So maybe ask for a little bit less sauce. But otherwise, Glenny's kebabs, they're probably my go-to at the moment.
And finally, what's one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Practice more. Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to be playing. You always think you've got time to practice, but then you end up playing catch up, or you feel like you're playing catch up. So practice more.
Well, Josh, if anyone wants to reach out because they'd like to get lessons or book you for gigs or
Sure.
Whatever like that, what's the best way for them to get in touch or see what you're doing?
They can find me on Instagram. Honestly, Instagram's the easiest way to contact me because I don't really. If they find me on Facebook, they're welcome to message me, but I really don't check Facebook that much.
No, well, I'll check a link to your Instagram on the website under Josh Manu.
Yeah, perfect. So Instagram's the best way.
Too easy. Well, thanks so much, Josh. This has been great.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Our Drummers Musicians. I hope you enjoyed getting to know another Melbourne muso like I did. Help us grow by leaving a review, share the podcast with friends and family, and subscribe on our website for extra info. Got a guest you'd love to hear on the show? Please let us know at ourdrummersmusicians.com. See you next time.